What we're doing now So just for those who are coming in, the two questions to talk to with your stranger: what are you bringing to contribute to the event? And what do you want to take away from the event? And in the virtual room, they can see the chat screen, but it's very far away and small. D. Williams, yeah, they were real chocolate brownies. Yeah. It will be bigger and nearer, D. Williams. I don't know how you pronounce you, D. Williams or De Williams, when we break into smaller groups. Yeah, ginger, virtual no-calorie brownies. What fun is there in that? Ah, yes, of course we did. Deirdre. Now I understand who it is. So, in the virtual room, if you're typing in what you can contribute, where's the bell gone? I say this every time. This is the worst bell I've ever used. I want a real cowbell next time I come. Okay, please, in the physical room, find somebody new. You've had 3 minutes together with your stranger. Find another stranger. Same questions. Introduce yourselves. And then, what are you bringing to contribute to the event? And what's the one thing you want to take away from the event? Please move around. Find another stranger. And in the virtual room, we're getting the contributions in the virtual room. And we now need as well just notes. Yes, you do, Roxana. But what we're suggested online is that you did the first question first, which is what can I contribute, and then you do the second question. What do I want to take away? That was ludicrous. I was looking into the chat screen rather than into the camera, because you can see me in the camera, and I'll take my glasses off because I don't need my glasses off. I was looking into the screen. And the virtual room, as is so often the case, no, so rarely the case, you are about the same number online as there is here, which is great. Don't see a lot of answers to my question in the virtual room. Okay, ladies and gents, if you'd like to take your seats, or stay standing, I don't mind. Okay. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm going to turn that way around. Assuming that's now what the people in the online room see. So we've got 39 in the online room, slightly outnumbering what we have here. Two things to do now. One is I asked Carolina, I'm going to find it really difficult every time not to say the wrong name now. I asked Carolina before lunch just to introduce the idea of the SDG riddle as an introduction to what was coming afterwards, but we already planned, and we agreed afterwards we need to do as well, a little bit more detailed introduction now. It's an important riddle. There are prizes. We're still not going to tell you what the prizes are, but Carolina's going to have 2 or 3 more minutes to describe to you the game, what your task is, and you'll understand when you get the task why you need to, I suspect you might want to form a team. It's a bit like, as we do in Britain, a pub quiz. You know, you need lots of brains. Across the generations, genders, all the other axes of diversity.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hi there. So, is this on? Yes? Okay, so I just want to run you through this riddle because It's actually this is actually a reworked version of Einstein's riddle. So it's really a mind bender. If you have had the opportunity to look at it, it's one of those things that should really just like hook you and make you really frustrated that it's not so easy to solve. So the riddle is, and it's based on the SDGs, and I will bring our maps tomorrow. I'm missing them right now, but you don't need a map to solve the riddle. So we're talking about a panel discussion on the SDGs, which is something that is happening. It's going to happen here almost every day for the next 15 years. So we have 5 international organizations participating in this synergy panel. This is one of the things that we really want to highlight. When we do our SDG mapping, we really want to highlight the synergies. Every organization will address one key impact. This is also one of the things that in our project we really try to emphasize. What are these organizations achieving? In our mapping, organizations have marked what kind of expertise they have, and we have the total number. We have these numbers, so we know that there are 27 organizations that share this or that type of expertise. So when they present on this issue, they'll say, by the way, there are another 27 guys doing this, and they will mention which SDG they will be presenting. So every organization will present one SDG, one area of expertise. They're going to mention how many other organizations also share their same level of expertise, and they're going to tell a story about an impact. So the riddle, we're launching it now, and I don't know how well coordinated I am with our Twitter account, but I'll just throw out a hint right now. I'll just go right away. ITU is there, and they're gonna highlight their expertise in capacity building. So now we know that one of the organizations is ITU, and one of the expertise areas is capacity building. And the ultimate question, the ultimate thing you need to figure out is who's going to be presenting on SDG 3.
Thank you very much, Carolina. I'm not going to ask if there are any questions, because we're not going to give you the answers if there are any. The key thing is to make sure that colleagues online get the same information as here. Colleagues online are possibly going to be advantaged because the hints are coming out on Twitter. So unless you're not paying attention in the room and you're paying attention to Twitter, you won't catch them at the same speed. There will be advantage in you trying to form a team with somebody who is online, because that way you're going to be able to build the expertise between you. Enormous demonstration of the value of captioning, because the captions capture for both the people, particularly the people online, because not a lot of people here in the room are using the captions, all the details of what Carolina just said. To summarize again, 5 international organizations are participating in a panel on SDG synergies in Geneva. Each organization will address one key. You got this on here. I'm reading this out because actually this complete is not online, I think. Each organization will address one key impact made in this area, as well as the number of agencies in Geneva working on the same SDG with the complementary expertise. Each organization will present one SDG, highlighting one area of expertise, as evaluated in PCP's SDGs map. That will physically be here today. We'll make sure it's available online, possibly earlier. And no organization will present on the same SDG, area of expertise, impact, or number of agencies with complementary exercise. So there are total, how many hints are there? Okay. There are about 10 hints or so. Great. Good. Thank you very much. So we are now at the point in the agenda when Richard Bowley, an e-diplomacy specialist, ex the US State Department, is due to give a presentation. We have Richard Bowley's presentation. We don't have Richard Bowley. Richard Bowley is due online. It could be that there's been more snowfall near where Richard Bowley lives or works, which is around the DC area. Who knows? It doesn't matter because we are infinitely flexible, are we not? So what we're going to do is we're going to move the second item on the agenda up, sorry, the third item on the agenda up to point 2. Do we have Richard Bowley yet? Ah! Now look, I mean, what timing, eh? just-in-time presentations. I'll tell you while we're sorting out the technology. You've seen from the agenda, what happens after Richard Bowley's presentation is the first of the speed geeks. Speed geek comes, as you'd expect, from the term speed date, and it's essentially the opportunity for you to have conversations with more than one or two people. And the way that speed geeks work, a bit like, well, not at all like how speed dates work, but how speed geeking, it's also more politely called shift and share, but I prefer speed geek. In this room, there will be two stations, and in the other room at the other end of the corridor, this is the De Mello room, that is the Crucial room. And let me actually open this up now. And for colleagues online, I'll put this into the online chat. So after Richard Bowley has made his presentation, here in the De Mello room, we'll be looking at the question, what can we learn from internet governance? In this room, via remote presentation, will be Todd Talbot from ISOC and Edmund Tam from ITU. So there'll be two stations here. And in the other room, at the other end of the corridor in Crucial, there will be Lewis Bobo from the IGF Secretariat and Nigel Hickson from ICANN. And the way that these kind of exercises work is that each person gives a brief introduction to their topic to a small group of participants. You choose one of the four stations, and then you have a conversation for about 15 or 20 minutes, depending on the time. And it's absolutely up to you how active that conversation is. You have a chance to interrogate, if you like, question deeply the person who has the expertise about working remotely through the internet governance process. After about 20 minutes, we ring the bells, and you choose another group. You may choose to stay in the same group if you find your interlocutor so engrossing, but you move to another group and you have a similar conversation with the second person. And I think we have time for 3 rounds of that. And so the idea is that you move in small groups between the different anchor people at those stations, and you have deeper conversations than you can normally have with a panel and questions from the floor. So that's where we're moving to afterwards. But I understand Richard Bowley is here now. We could do something else before Richard Bowley. He's not here. So we're ready with Richard Bowley. Hi, Richard. Can you hear me, Richard?
We can see your lips moving, Richard. I can't hear you yet. We're still working with the technology. Richard, if you can see me.
Let him.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we hear you now. Richard, just to explain.
Fantastic.
Welcome to the Geneva Engage event. You've got online, you've got 40 participants, 40, and here in the room in Geneva, you've got about the same number of participants.
We've already introduced you, but I'm sure you could just say a couple of words about yourself. We've got your presentation ready loaded, so I'll sit down and get out of the way.
Thank you very much. I wish I could have been there with you today. It looks like a fantastic meeting, and surprisingly less snow in Geneva than in Washington, D.C. Yeah, briefly, I'm was a former career diplomat. Spent the last 8 years of my life as a diplomat doing undiplomatic things like promoting entrepreneurship and the growth of internal innovation in a large bureaucracy. I left the State Department a couple of years ago and have continued to do work with organizations like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Inter-American Development Bank, the Inter-American Foundation, U.S. Institute of Peace, largely doing the same thing, helping them to innovate in areas that that are oftentimes difficult for large organizations. So what I'm going to focus on today, oftentimes, you go to a speech and somebody gives you this great presentation about what they're doing now, and then 5 or 3, 4 years into the future, you wonder, how is that going? how is that wonderful innovation that we heard about doing today? And so what I'm actually going to do is give an unvarnished view of this effort within the State Department under the auspices of the Office of E-Diplomacy, which I headed for 4 years, to try to get the State Department to communicate better internally. So how can we use a lot of these wonderful connection technologies that we so often use and think about in external communications to work internally? So this is a little bit of an autopsy of what has worked, what didn't work, and why, and hopefully being as honest and as possible. So let's just jump right in. Again, what I'll be looking at, and no effort to rewrite history. If something failed, I'm happy to take a bullet for that. What led to the State Department and starting the Office of E-Diplomacy? Actually, it was, while I served under Secretary Clinton, it was actually Secretary Colin Powell who launched the Office of E-Diplomacy. And there's nothing begets success like failure. And the tipping point for the State Department to move into using, looking at how we could communicate better were three very huge failures. First was the 1998 bombing of the American embassies in East Africa. And subsequent to that, a blue ribbon panel pointed out that the State Department needed to do a much better job of sharing information and knowledge among the foreign affairs community. Of course, 9/11, which we all remember as a tragic event and also an indicator of a lack of coordination, where different agencies inside the US government didn't know the pieces that they could have put together to perhaps have kept that from happening. And finally, there was an expensive flop, a face plant, which was an effort to respond to those first two. The State Department, put in, I think, spent $11 million trying to do a hierarchical command and control knowledge management platform, which nobody used because it didn't follow the natural workflow and the natural thinking of anyone. So that's how we got to where the State Department launched the Office of E-Diplomacy. Another sign that an organization is kind of facing this collaboration challenge is when email, a near half-century-old technology, is the main way that people collaborate. I've never sat in a room and asked people who wished they got more email and had anyone raise their hand. So obviously people feel email overload and find that they're spending way too much of their time, their day, sitting in front of a computer responding to email that is counterproductive or marginally productive at best. So when you think of the way people communicate, there's everything from, as this slide indicates, asynchronous to synchronous. So asynchronous are things like email, where one person sends something and at some future date somebody responds, to synchronous, like this presentation that I'm making, where people can immediately respond and I can then respond to them, and it's a virtual dialogue. So if a clogged inbox takes in more of your time than you'd like, there's an opportunity for doing some more kind of creative work in looking at how you share information internally. Getting started, I think the big lesson of this relative success of the Office of E-Diplomacy is that you can't be an ad hoc group. You need to have roots. You need to have somebody whose budget is going to be insured into the future if you want to have an innovative, collaborative center within a large organization. Where to start? Start with the problems. Make those clearly defined pain points that people have, and especially ones that revolve around communication and collaboration. When those happen, it's an opportunity for you to come in with a new solution that could help solve the problem. And you get people then to be advocates for this new approach. So let's get into some examples. One, and this is I think by far the most successful platform that came out of the Office of E-Diplomacy, was Diplopedia. And Diplopedia is built on the standard well-known platform that of Wikipedia, and that wiki people know how to use and know what it's good for. So wikis are great for procedures, processes. It was originally developed by my friend out in Portland, Ward Hastings, who used it for code libraries. He's done a lot of innovation on wiki since then. It's good for quick real-time collaboration and institutional memory. That's kind of the real key. So let me give you an example of one way that we use this. The Collaborative Management Initiative was an effort by our 270 some embassies and consulates around the world to look at what were the best practices that could be applied in 80% of these consulates or embassies 80% of the time. So not the gold standard and not the least common denominator. And this is on everything from how do you run a guard force around your embassy? How do you do the motor pool? How do you do HR practices? All the things that go into running a large organization. And how can you, when an innovation happens, ensure that that gets spread as quickly as possible? So this playbook was kind of the go-to, easily editable, easily changed source for that. And there literally were hundreds of examples like this where people found it better to use the platform of the wiki to share and collaborate in real time, as well as have an institutional memory on how the problem or the challenge could be addressed. So I'm going to run through some of these examples. First was a wiki. That's good for evolving persistent knowledge. Then when you think about content with conversation, that's something that may be ephemeral. It's important today, may not be as important tomorrow, but you want to have a place where people can meet and share information. So these are blogs, and we have over 60 of them in the State Department. They're great for replacing newsletters because they're searchable and people they don't clog people's inbox. They're great for change management, where you can have a conversation about things that people are uncertain about. Crossover commonality, so people who bike into work share that, but then they find that they have something at work in common that they wouldn't have found out if they didn't first connect over the fact that they bike together. It humanizes leadership, and it also gives an on-ramp for people who usually don't have an opportunity to collaborate or don't feel like they're invited into collaboration. So here's just an example. This was a social media hub. Again, this is, think back 5 or 6 years ago when the use of social media was still, people were uncertain. They didn't want to tread into it and get in trouble. They wanted some guidance on what worked and what didn't work. And this was a place where, ambassadors, deputy chiefs of mission, people who weren't in public affairs or public diplomacy, but still wanted to engage using social media, they could ask their questions, see what their peers were doing, get some ideas on what to watch out for, to give them more confidence in doing it. Again, we had 60 some of these blog-based platforms for people to collaborate. Again, everything from people who bicycle to work to Iran watchers to the impact of Africa or of China in Africa. The next, we've gone from first wikis, then which is evolving persistent knowledge, blogs, which are content with conversation. Next to ideation, which is where ideas can spring up and people in power can look at those and decision makers can decide whether they want to put resources behind the idea, and they can understand that by voting and comments how popular those ideas are. So this is a double-edged sword because it's easy for, and I think arguably say that this has happened somewhat at the State Department, where Secretary Clinton launched the Secretary Sounding Board, and over time it's become a place more where people can complain about things that aren't working rather than seek solutions, and there hasn't been as much management follow through as we had initially hoped. But it is still going strong. This is what it looks like, and some of the success stories were things I had mentioned earlier. Bicyclists. There were a lot of people who biked into the State Department, but one of the things that restricted the number of people bicycling in was that the bike racks were very distant from the showers, so people had to walk in their spandex bike shorts, a long way through the State Department, coming into contact with assistant secretaries and deputy assistant secretaries, and they said, they didn't want to risk their reputation by doing that. So what people said is, why don't we just put some showers right next to the bike racks? And sure enough, we did that and doubled ridership. The number of people bicycling into the State Department. Okay, so next we've gone from wikis to blogs to ideation platforms. Now we're going to internal networking platforms where you can develop your own profile, highlight the work that you're doing, and develop, as Reid Hoffman at LinkedIn says, your personal brand. And so this is kind of a platform that looks like LinkedIn meets Twitter. It's the way digital natives work. You can create your personal profile, which shows your expertise not just in your current job. So you may be working on intellectual property rights in your current job, but you also have a lot of experience working on a variety of other areas, and you want that to be apparent to people. You can form groups on the fly. You can link to your work output, and you can kind of make serendipity happen, where you're more likely to identify somebody who you don't know who needs the information that could help you successfully complete your task. So this is what it looks like. Corridor, again, looks a lot like LinkedIn. LinkedIn meets Twitter. That's kind of a Twitter fall in the center, and I think there are probably 22,000 people have actually signed up for this at State Department, which is that's about half of the professional staff. But unfortunately, probably only 16% of those are active users. So while it's had some success, it hasn't become ubiquitous enough to become necessary for doing your job day to day, which is really what would ensure that it was taking advantage of the network effect. So now this is one of the things that one of the creations that I thought would be the most useful is a kind of a Google Reader internally. So this is an answer to Clay Shirky's challenge, which is, do we have information overload? No, we have filter failures. And we thought we had created the filter, the killer filter app. This was like Google Reader, where you could curate both internal and external sources. So you could take the tens of thousands of internal cables, and as well as internal memos and internal sources of information, curate based on code words, just like you would do for Google Alerts, as well as external sources. So you could kind of tee up exactly what any decision maker needed quickly. And we just were so excited about this, and there were some pretty interesting uses of it, but it never kind of crossed the boundary from from a small cadre, probably of 300 users a month. So while we thought it was a wonderful initiative and innovation, unfortunately, it wasn't able to catch on. So this is kind of what it looks like. You would have the specific articles teed up for you, and then the little red circle on the right would allow you to share this on Corridor. So again, you take all this information out of the email inbox, as I indicated initially, and then you're able to share on the platforms that exist. So again, integration, but unfortunately not broad adoption. Another innovation that we had was the Virtual Student Foreign Service. This is an e-internship, and we had kind of two sides of it that I worked strong to develop. First was the virtual internship that was a 7-month duration. The other was a micro volunteering or micro tasking, where you could just have a discrete task. The micro volunteering we successfully piloted. We were never able to get that fully approved, but the e-internship was and is wildly successful. Last year, the Virtual Student Foreign Service e-internship had actually 16 or 15 other U.S. government agencies jumped on and wanted to have e-interns working for them as well. There were over 340 projects. 500 plus e-interns were chosen from nearly 3,000 applicants. tremendously powerful. And oftentimes people thought, well, we'll get the interns to do the grunt work that we don't really want to do. Actually, what they found is the e-interns were doing the work that nobody else in the government could do. A quick example, we had a newly created Office of the Chief Economist, reporting directly to Secretary Clinton. High-profile position, but with little resources. They were looking to do something that was high impact, and we helped them recruit an economist, a PhD economist candidate at Stanford University, an MBA candidate who was fluent in Farsi, and a database manager. And they were doing a real-time analysis of the impact of sanctions on Iran, based wholly on open source information. Their analysis, when it was reported to the White House, blew them away. It was much better, or had insights that weren't contained in even the intelligence agency's analysis. So great work done. I love to quote Bill Joy, who's the founder of, or was one of the founders of Sun Microsystems, who says, Joy's law says no matter who you are, the brilliant people work for somebody else. And the way to tap into those is with things like e-internships. Finally, we did a microtasking platform. This was done, I hired two presidential management fellows. These were these super geeks that were brought in by the White House to develop a platform for collaboration. This was CrowdWork platform, is open for all of government to use. Anybody can go to it. You can, it's called Midas. You can go and download the software. It's open source software, and it's an opportunity to have freeform groups identify a challenge, build a team, and manage the outcome, all without those people having to have met face to face. This was piloted at our embassy in Mexico to some pretty important success, and unfortunately didn't find an institutional home in the State Department. So it's, regardless of the success, has not been picked up. So let me give you just an honest scorecard on the things that we did, the innovations that we did. Diplopedia, I think, is a raging success. Communities at Stake continue to be successful. The sounding board, again, I believe is kind of the ideation platform, because not enough of the ideas are being picked up. And frankly, I think one of the challenges is rather than starting with the idea, maybe it's better to start with the problem. And some platforms are now moving with, what is your problem? What is the thing that you're trying to solve? And then let us think about the solution. So you crowdsource the solution versus starting with, because large organizations, oftentimes people aren't, not part of their job description is to create new ideas. So starting with a problem, and there's some platforms that take that approach, which might be a little better, more transparent. Corridor, again, I think small, small but important impact, but not the network effect that needed to make it ubiquitous for work. CrowdWorks, again, successful, but not successfully piloted, but not institutionalized. And the current, that was that the filter failure solution, unfortunately, while it worked well, didn't get picked up. A couple of things I didn't mention, which we did have successes with, relative successes, was setting up a GIS mapping group within eDiplomacy. That has grown tremendously as a global organization, being able to visualize and map and use mapping and data for insight, as well as future analysis and future action, has been very successful. And our internal search, it continues to be pretty good, although we have some technical barriers because of SharePoint and the difficulty of integrating search with SharePoint. So just parting thoughts, institutionalization is difficult. You always have to focus on the end user, and if the end user doesn't pick up like with the example with our the answer to filter failure, if the end users don't pick it up, no matter how great you think it is, it didn't meet its need. You need leadership's active participation, and you really can't predict the future. Things that look great today or get some traction today may not be there tomorrow, and your successor may have a different focus than you have, so you can't really reach beyond your own personal mandate. if you'd like to read more about what we were doing in e-diplomacy, here's a link to an article by Fergus Hansen at the Brookings Institute, which went into some detail on e-diplomacy at the State Department. It was a couple of years ago, and I think Fergus is looking maybe to do an update. I'm going to see him next week. And finally, this is my contact information if you have questions, or if you want to don't want to criticize me publicly but would like to provide some comments, you can direct them to me. I'm thick-skinned and would be happy to hear the truth. I hope that that this has been helpful, and I would be happy to take, if there's any time, if there's enough time, take any questions.
Have you got an icon for clapping? I don't think there is an icon for clapping in Adobe. For clapping. There's thunderous clapping from the online room. Thank you very much indeed, Richard. We've got time really for a couple of questions. Ideally one from the online room and one from here. But we want to move, we planned this in as a kind of, I know we're not allowed to use the term TED Talk, so we've got a kind of Richard talk. That doesn't work. Richard, give me a. I had one before and it's gone into the fog of the British virus. But thank you, Richard. That was really, really interesting to hear your view on it now, because I met you while you were still in the middle of the activities, and it's really interesting to get your scorecard. It's rare that you get that kind of post hoc view of what happened during that event. I think it's really interesting to see what worked and what didn't work. Okay, any quick questions? So it's after lunch here in the physical world. In the virtual world, you haven't had lunch, so presumably you're much more alert. Any questions from the online room? One question.
Hi, Richard. Ernesto from the ICRC. I was wondering, what is the difference between the communities at State and Corridor? The thing that you said, LinkedIn plus Twitter. What was the communities at State? I don't think you really talked about them.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to clarify that. Communities at State really were our blogs. So what you could say, you know, I can give an example. There was one that was dedicated to where both spouses were foreign service officers and have unique challenges, both in managing their career, managing their family, you know, addressing family issues. So it was an opportunity to have a conversation around a specific issue. We also had the opportunity, once we formed the corridor, which is focused more around your personal profile. So the personal profile allows you to say, this is my expertise, these are my language, this is the language that I speak, these are the places that I've worked, these are the areas of my kind of work expertise. And the idea was that you could go into Corridor and let's say, you know, just making the example up that, you know, an important Russian businessman is in Mexico City and wants to swing by and see the ambassador to talk about some issue, you know, and the ambassador quickly wants to find out who in the embassy speaks Russian and knows a little bit about economics or business. Well, if everybody had their Corridor profile filled out, you could quickly look in and say, you know, who among our, you know, couple of hundred employees or, you know, diplomats in Mexico speaks Russian and, you know, has worked as an economic or commercial officer. So it's an expertise finder. And then, and again, I always think of diplomats, you know, we change our jobs so often, and you think of our expertise as a stack of business cards, but the people only can see the top business card. And what we wanted Corridor to do was to kind of fan those business cards out so that you could, all the expertise of your career was apparent. And we did eventually link Corridor to communities, so that when you commented on something in communities, you could link back to your profile, and vice versa. If you made a comment or a contribution in a community, it would link back to your you know, to your profile. So it's kind of like LinkedIn has done, has integrated in a lot of kind of blog type qualities today. We had those as two separate platforms integrated and linked.
Thanks very much. Quick question from Stephanie Burry, then we'll have to move on. What platform was the sounding board? Was that a website or a blog type?
So sounding board we actually built. It was an ideation platform. I can remember the day that Secretary Clinton announced at a town hall that this was on a Wednesday. By Friday, she would have a sounding board for people to submit their ideas, and we thought, wow, that's really cool. I wonder who's going to be putting that up. And right after the town hall was done, we got a call saying, by the way, can you get that thing up by Friday? So we built the first sounding board was built on a blog platform. It was the platform that we were using at the time was movable type. That was kind of the industry standard. We've since, like the rest of the world, moved on. But so initially it was very simple. It was a place for people to put ideas. It had no analytics in the back. Once it grew in popularity, we put out a bid and went to one of the many purveyors of ideation software and bought a package that had a stronger back-end analytics. So
great. Thank you very much indeed, Richard. I found that fascinating, and I commend to everybody here physically in the room and online the Fergus Hansen piece. It's a really, really good summary of a really important period when the use of social media began to, penetrated large traditional institutions like the State Department. It's really good about the process of change that happens alongside the technological changes. So another round of applause for Richard. Thank you very much. Hope you make it over again some other time. Online, more thunderous. Yeah, I can see a clap, 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 and a clap, 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 clap. All right. So now we are going to move to the first of the Speed Geek sessions. You're going to have to give us some time in this room to move things around. To summarize again, well, I'm completely off time, aren't I? Between now and about 4 o'clock, and that's about 3 rounds of about 20 minutes. Time is infinitely flexible, isn't it? So here in the Demello room, Todd Talbot, who I see now is online, welcome Todd, from ISOC, will be presenting from where he is now. Edmund Tam is also going to be in this room. In the other room at the other end is going to be Lewis Bobo from the IGF Secretariat and Nigel Hickson from ICANN. And you'll make your choice on the basis of a 60-second introduction maximum from each of them. So, Todd, technologically, can we get Todd to speak and give his 60 seconds introduction? All right, we want to start with somebody in the room. Edmund, you're up next. Where are you? Edmund Tam, 60 seconds. Round of applause. It's after lunch. Move your bodies.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Edmund Tam from the ITU. Just to introduce myself, my background is a system and network engineer, and I'm responsible for the anything to do with technology for meetings at the ITU. So ITU, we started doing interactive remote participation in 2009, and one of the main requirements is to provide multilingual platform for the remote participants as well. So that was the main challenge we have, because I'm sure even today, when you look at the platforms that are available on the internet, it's only for single audio. So we make our developments and then we make that actually happen. So I can share with you our experience and how we actually implement this solution. Thank you.
35 seconds, thank you very much. Spot on. No, we're not competitive. Yeah, nothing at all. If I can make my technology work. And for those of you who don't get to, there are going to be 3 sessions and 4 speakers, so clearly you might miss one of them this afternoon. Edmund is speaking again tomorrow. So the particular focus today is the work with the internet governance process and organizations, and tomorrow it's more generally in terms of remote participation. Who would like to go next? Either Lewis or Nigel? Lewis. Round of applause for Lewis.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I am Luis Bobo, representing the Internet Governance Forum Secretariat, part of United Nations, Department of Economic and Social Affairs. We organize, maybe you know, a meeting, annual meeting, and several other meetings discussing how internet can be an actor for the economic and social development. And I am the technical responsible of all the team and the secretariat. So I am in charge of the technical well-being of the meetings that we do. Especially, one of the things that we do is remote participation, and it's very important for us, as internet is a mean for this. And in my talk, I'm going to talk about the best practices we have found, things that how to solve things that can go bad, and these kind of things that can be interesting for remote participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Spot on. All right, somebody else is going to have to hit the button just like that. Who's next? Nigel, where are you?
Spot on. Can I start, or do you have to hit something? Are you sure? Yeah, right. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Nigel. I work for ICANN. Don't hold that against me. I'm not going to tell you anything about ICANN because it's deeply boring. Don't quote me on that. No tweets. But I will tell you a bit about what we do in terms of engaging. I'll tell you what sort of platforms we use, although I can't remember their names, but I'll tell you what we do anyway. And I'll tell you what, when it goes right and when it goes wrong. So I'll tell you a bit about, what we find good at ICANN with the remote participation, with online participation, etc., and what, where it doesn't work too well. So it'll be a bit of both. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Spot on. And Todd, please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Are you hearing me?
Yes. Sorry, beg your pardon. Yes.
That's okay. Well, good afternoon, all. My name is Todd Tolbert, and I am the Chief Administrative Officer at the Internet Society. In my session today, I'd like to share with you how ISOC has made a culture shift internally and in our community to adopt remote participation via video tools, topical community forums, hybrid events, and all this to extend collaboration past geographic and travel boundaries that a whole bunch of us face. We've made this change to help flourish multi-stakeholder interaction that previously might have left some people with great input disenfranchised. So I'd like to share with you our current path and then look forward to a lively discussion with you on how we can all better implement remote participation. Thank you.
I hope you can hear that, Todd. Thank you very much.
I can.
Good. Okay, so that's your choice. You'll make your choice 3 times. You will choose between Todd Tolbert. Todd will be presenting from here, and for 2 or 3 minutes, we'll just shuffle some chairs around so that you can participate from this station with Todd. Edmund is going to be participating over there. Sorry, participating. Edmund is going to be talking from over there, and that'll take it. Oh, beg your pardon. No. Isn't it wonderful that things keep changing? That Edmund is going to be participating from over there, and we're going to move some chairs around there. Lewis is going to be in the Crucial room, which, depending on how you do it, is between 1.15 seconds and 1.55 seconds if you amble. So make it your way at your own speed to the other room, right at the other end of the corridor, where you can choose between Lewis, who introduced himself there, and Nigel, who introduced himself there. And then in 20 minutes, we'll ring bells, and you'll move around. Ladies and gentlemen, make your choices. Oh, you see, you've already turned your back, and it's too late. We've got Hinton Field provided 22.6 million people with water in 2014. It's much clearer already, isn't it?
Can everyone hear me? Good, thank you. I can hear some rustling in the room. I couldn't hear any talking.
Hello? But
There
we
you
are
are.
going to disturb the others.
I can hear you now.
Ah, okay. Okay, good. Okay, hello. No, we're here. Well, I suggest you start and then we take it from there.
Okay, great. Well, I can't see anyone in the room, so I'll just hope that there's someone there. But hello again, I'm Todd Tolbert, and thank you for joining me in this workshop. I am the Chief Administrative Officer of the Internet Society. I've also spent 3 years as the Senior Director of Information Technology here, so I've got quite a good background on how we've done some things in terms of remote participation. So for just a few minutes, I'd like to share with you that work, what we've been doing in ISOC, and the work that we've done towards growing our remote participation in events, in collaborations and discussions on the internet for the internet. So I'm going to try moving my slide here. For those of you who aren't familiar with ISOC, we are a global organization. We're primarily based in Geneva, Switzerland, and Reston, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. The Internet Society is committed to an open internet everywhere for everyone. We work at the intersection of public policy, technical standards, and access around the globe, which makes for a very dynamic and interesting constituency. As you can see, we cover a large part of the world between our 113 chapters and our 80,000 plus individual members and supporters. In addition, we have 143 organizational members, which take the form of companies and organizations from all over the world. We support this community with 90 staffers based in 20 countries around the globe and provide regional and local work through 6 bureaus. They're based all over the world. So with such a diverse staff and community and mission, our intention in remote participation is to increasingly expand the conversations, the input and the collaboration past the boundaries of just physical face-to-face meetings. There's no doubt in my mind that that face-to-face meetings are important, but the reality of multi-stakeholderism is that the ecosystem can flourish further as we broaden the participation by as many voices as possible. The use of airplanes and conference rooms, that's not the only way to get this participation. So through our Internet First initiatives, we look to tackle a few issues, and here's some of our goals for that. So we want to engage those who, for whatever reason, can't join a physical meeting. We want to extend the collaboration past time zones and geography and utilize this great global technology that is the internet in a way that allows conversations from anywhere and anyone who wishes to engage. To that end, we started extending our conversations and collaborations first with our staff. We wanted to bring them together face-to-face, online, to hear each other's voices, to share and nurture ideas, and attempt to bring this geographically dispersed team a bit closer and more efficient on a day-to-day basis. We then moved on to our community. Sorry, my graphic didn't come through there. We moved on to engage our community and stakeholders in the same way through what we call community forums, which is very much like what we're doing at the top of the next hour here. We secure access and development as subject matter experts of our staff and community to educate, discuss, and work together to determine the way forward that benefits the internet. These have turned into fantastic venues for our community to interact and speak, and while we do a large one every 3 months, this type of interaction doesn't stop there. Our teams and chapters have taken on the model and have made frequent meetings among themselves the standard, and bring that expertise and knowledge back to the wider community on a regular basis. So after succeeding in those two veins, our next step was to attempt to bring the entire community together for a single event, a single gathering to embrace the collaboration and to tie together the internet community in a way that had not been done before at the Internet Society. Intercommunity 2015 was a large initiative, initiative culminated in our first hybrid event that included 15 nodes in cities around the world, over 5.5 hours of content and discussion. We had 142 countries represented and over 1,900 people in those nodes or online individually participating and engaging. We used the internet for the internet to have a meeting about the internet. We learned a lot about how to use the technology and how to engage people in a way and on a level that made that interaction valuable for their time. Many people joined together in conference rooms in places like Thailand and Amsterdam and Nairobi and Auckland, but we had twice as many people join from their personal computers in their offices or from their homes. They all came to interact, to discuss, to share, and learn from and with one another. So obviously we had some key learnings from doing this. They're what's going to guide us and push us forward in how we do remote participation better. We want to make sure that we layer this on over time and get better and better as we do these things. So in my mind, to answer the question of how we would like to do remote participation well, I think we at the Internet Society, and maybe some of you, can take these 4 items as a starting spot and then apply to what you know about your own audience. So the first thing is one size does not fit all, meaning that in our case, we weren't able to come up with one technology solution that will work for every person or every aspect of the remote participation. In our case, we had to create 2 solutions, one for our nodes or hubs and one for our individuals, and then bring the 2 together on the back end. We had to design our remote participation into the agenda, much like what we're doing here, designing it in. While our primary speakers were in our nodes, we knew we needed to engage those people who were not in the same or in any node. We didn't want to make them fight to get a word in or feel that they are not an equal member of the conversation. What we needed to remember was those who want to collaborate need to have the ability to do so no matter wherever they're sitting. Tech solutions, those abound, they're available, they're affordable, but don't overwhelm the participants. A plethora of screens and functions and features in a technology solution can get people confused and more focused on how they're participating rather than the actual engagement that they came to do. And then we found over-communication to our participants. Yes, there is such a thing as too much information, but we attempted to err on the side of caution in providing timely and rich information before the events. Reinforcing messages of the topics we were going to talk about, the agendas, the use of the technology, and the intent for the collaboration can and did pay dividends for us in the end, as participants can be more engaged in the conversation and in the collaboration that we were looking to get. So with that backdrop, I'd love to answer any questions. I know I went through that quickly, but we're speed geeking here. So we could discuss further anything that we did, or we can talk about things that you might have run across on this important topic of internet governance and other topics that your community needs to be engaged in.
Todd, I guess.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, I'm Jovan Kurbalija, director of DiploFoundation, and one impressive exercise that you did is this global meeting. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend, but Teresa, a colleague of mine, told me that it was quite impressive and smooth exercise. A few questions. What platform did you use? How big is your team for preparing it, and what did you find as sort of three major challenges in organizing it? But because as far as I know, it is one of the unique exercises in the global community to have that level of coordination on with the hubs in situ and online participants. Therefore, this question: platform, team that did it, and what sort of three challenges or risks?
Well, let me start with the challenges, because those are probably the most interesting to me. The first was, we did 15 nodes. Now, one of those nodes, we had a highly technical team in handling all of the AV and the communication, because that's where our board of trustees and our CEO Kathy Brown were based. So one of the coordination parts was, with so many nodes, is getting everybody to have the appropriate equipment, to have good audio and video, just like what you're doing there in the room in Geneva, and to make it to where everyone can see and be seen at the same time. So first one was coordinating 15 places around the globe in different languages, with needing help from many people to get that all coordinated. The second was to try to put out, for those who weren't going to be in a node, to put out a bit of technology that wouldn't have them install a bunch of things. I know, with talking with Arvin and getting ready for this event, he talked about using Adobe Connect because of its use of Flash and how that's on many computers already. We sought to do the same thing. We did it through HTML5, but we sought to do it in such a way that people wouldn't have to load a bunch of software on their computers. And then the last thing was the agenda, building in remote engagement, building in the opportunity for the nodes to speak. So we sent our executive team, and we sent our very good subject matter experts on the staff out into the nodes, and they spoke from the nodes. So we moved around the globe and let people give presentations and host conversations and discussions. So coordinating all that is like juggling and wishing you had 5 or 6 arms. So the platform we used Zoom.us as the back-end channel to do the communication, to do audio and video, and it's a very good product. I don't make any money from them, but it is a very good product. We then worked with a company in the US called Digitel that took that feed from Zoom and sent it out into a platform that people could use in a browser. And the team, so the team was really a core of about 6 people, and really only one of those technology-wise was myself, but we had very good consultants and very good contractors in Digitel and in Zoom to be able to pull all of this together, as well as AV people on site in the different nodes. I think I covered it all.
Todd, one question. Is there any sort of a document or and concrete suggestion? Would you be interested to contribute one article with a sort of summary what you just presented, and which could be part of the publication on the effective participation, and you can summarize your experience from ISOC?
We'd love to participate in that. I do have my Twitter handle is up here. If anybody is interested, if you just hit me up on Twitter, or I'll post later. We did a complete blog, or I did a blog about the event that we did, including some video content on explaining how we did it. It's not detailed in the actual aspects and what technology, but would happy to participate in something like that, and to point you towards that documentation that's already out there.
That could be definitely interesting as a mix of, let's say, organizational part, technical part, and communication, and maybe even this, what is the most interesting, socio-emotional. When you're sending your members of executives to the different hubs, it's a really great idea that they connect from that and not from the central point. Congrats.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. I see a question in the chat. I'm going to take the bottom one because it's the one I most see. So your map shows no white dots in what can only be Russia and China. Do you provide circumvention tools for those countries where it seems ISOC is absent and banned? Now I'll start by saying that I am not the internet diplomacy expert at the Internet Society. What I would say about Russia and China is our deepest, sincerest desire to have chapters and to work with people in those countries. And I know that that work by our global engagement team is ongoing, and hopefully will bear some sort of fruit. I don't have off the top of my head here where that stands, but I do know we want to engage with those citizenships. Those are people, you know, there's, I can't remember the number, but half of the population now in the world is not on the internet, and part of our mantra and what we want to see happen is everyone on the internet everywhere. So we will work to engage with those folks. We don't provide any circumvention tools that I'm aware of to go around those folks. So I hope that covers that question. Question online here, what can the United Nations in Geneva learn from ISOC's experience with regard to making UN conferences more accessible within the UN's limited financial means? Great question. We didn't talk really much about financial means. We were very fortunate that we didn't spend a ton of money on doing our Intercommunity 2015. But ton of money or a lot of money is really kind of subjective as you look at it, because you know, if we had taken and flown a bunch of people around the world, how much would we have spent? The Internet Society did something like that back in 2012, and we spent a lot of the organization's money and sponsors and people's money to come to a physical location. So in comparison to that, we spend quite a bit less. I think that all organizations really should be thinking about how they do this better. The tools are out there, as we said earlier. This is really an interesting opportunity for anyone to engage people outside of the norm and outside of just flying folks around and booking big, large conference rooms. So I think, you know, we can all work together on this. I personally haven't been to many of the UN or any really of the UN conferences. I would be one that would hold up my hand and would be happy to work with the UN or whoever to figure out how this could be done better for their communities and for participation. Looks like we might have lost sound. Anyone? Oh, I see thanks, so I guess I'm still being heard. My colleague Jolly McPhee told me that we do have a chapter in Russia now. So that again, off the top of my head, I couldn't remember where we were on that. Don't see any other questions. Is there any from in the room there in Geneva? So there's a question here about what can I comment about in internet diplomacy. Again, I'll mention I am not the internet diplomacy expert at the Internet Society. So I would probably, and I'm sure some of my colleagues who are listening would probably get myself in trouble if I tried to take that on too much. What I will say is that we do have a fantastic team at the Internet Society who live and breathe that type of work. And I would be happy to connect you with some of them. I'm sure Constance Bonnier is somewhere around there, or Sally Wentworth here in our U.S. office. Those folks are great to talk about that. So I'm not trying to skirt the question, but I will have to pass so that I won't get myself in trouble. Online participants have not been taken into account. Well, hopefully I was answering their questions. The cost of the big intercommunity conference that we organized. Just to give you a few numbers, I don't have all of them in front of me. I know for all of the work that we did in the platform that we used that had audio, video, had chat capabilities, text chat capabilities. It had social question and answer, so you could ask a question, it could be voted up or down. All of that worked together to put a platform together for that people could use on any computer, on any tablet, on any phone, was around $45,000 US. And that included all of the custom work that they had to do for us, in making the colors and all of that. You can add into that the fact that we did have audio-visual costs pretty much in every room that we had a node in. So I would say that, I don't know exactly, but I think we had a budget of something like 4,000 US for each of the nodes. So in my head, I think we spent somewhere around 80,000 US dollars total to put on this event that, our first time at it, and may have been a lot larger if we'd have tried to fly everybody to one place. We have another 4 minutes. Ooh, I'm glad somebody said that. I wasn't sure where we were. Don't see any other questions. Do we have audio from the room? Is there anyone in the room that would like to ask a question? Were there challenges that you encountered that only a face-to-face meeting could solve? Well, I think just like in any of these types of conversations, the main thing that we found is a lot more people wanted to talk than we had time for. We had, quite a few people, 15 nodes, 6 to 7 on at a time. And more people wanted to talk, more people wanted to have their voice heard than we had time for. So we had a long list of questions that we had to get back to people, or comments, or things that we needed to follow up on. I don't know that would have been handled better in a face-to-face meeting, especially if we'd have tried to bring 2,000 people together at the same time. I think the only other thing that could have been done better in a face-to-face, and in my opinion is always done better in a face-to-face, is those hallway conversations, that networking that happens between two people as they're walking down a hall. So I think that could have been a little bit better, but I think we had a lively conversation in the chat between the people who were in the platform. I think I have just a couple minutes left, but someone asked about talking about Zoom versus Adobe Connect or WebEx. All very similar utilities. We like Zoom. We've looked at all of these things. We like Zoom because of how it works in low bandwidth, and it really has been great for us with our folks down in Africa, and being able to, over very low bandwidth, be able to communicate and do face-to-face. And that was something that we couldn't do on a regular basis with the previous tool that we used. I won't name it just because they're a great company and don't want to talk bad about them, but Zoom has been a good partner in being able to use over low bandwidth, as well as being able to extend it and pull it into different things. Like if you were to see our event that we're about to do in about 30 minutes, we're using Zoom for everybody to communicate, and then we're pulling that feed into live stream so that we can have just a one-way output as well. So it's been a great tool for us. An eDiplomat robot trying to add e-participation to the session. We have tried a robot thing before where we've had someone on a robot. So it's interesting. The one thing for a robot for us, and I don't know if it's the same thing of what you're doing with the eDiplomat, but it's a one-to-one. So we had a person in Australia who virtually attended a board meeting as a robot. And again, it's a one-to-one, so for each person that's not in the room, you have to have a robot, and you have to have the setup and the configuration. But we've tried that too. It's interesting technology, and I wish you luck with doing that. How are we on time? Are we ready to change? I can't hear a horn. While Roxana is typing, I'll just quickly cover the interpretation. We did do that too, simultaneous interpretation in two languages.